Ukraine's capital is facing a large-scale Russian missile and drone attack. Thousands of people have been sheltering in metros and bunkers. At least 5 districts of Kyiv have been targeted. Dnipro and Poltava in central Ukraine have also come under Russian fire. Moscow says it's launching long-range, high-precision weapons from air, land and sea. And these were the scenes in Kyiv overnight. At least 13 people have been killed. More than 90 others have been injured. Officials say attacks have set fire to some residential buildings and damaged others. Rescue efforts are underway as day breaks in Ukraine. Emergency crews have been pulling victims from beneath the rubble. Others are battling fires at homes and warehouses. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says Russia launched more than 70 missiles overnight and more than 500 drone attacks. And Russia says those attacks are in response to a series of Ukrainian strikes deep inside Russian territory. Energy facilities, military sites and airports in several regions have been attacked, and that's according to Russian media. One of the places hit was an oil refinery in the Russian city of Ufa. The site's more than 1,300 kilometers from the front line. Now, in a moment, we're going to speak to Yulia Shapovalova live for us in Moscow. First, let's go to Audrey MacAlpine. She's in the Ukrainian capital. Just tell us about what's been happening over the last 24 hours or so.
Yeah, Rob, we're here at one of over 20 sites in the capital, Kyiv, that was hit overnight. And you can just see the extent of the damage here that was caused by one missile that came tearing through the roof of one apartment building here. Just a thick layer of dust over these cars. You can see the bricks that were launched when that building was hit, which you can see here. Rescue efforts are still ongoing as they're searching to find people possibly trapped beneath the rubble. Already this morning, they've been able to pull several people out, but there are still believed to be children underneath, including a 15-year-old girl. Now, every few moments, they might suddenly stop and wait to hear if there's any sounds of people, any screams or calls for help underneath. But again, this is just one of over 20 sites that was hit. The attack began just before midnight yesterday when drones came through the city. You could hear the sounds of those interceptions. And then, just speaking for myself, before 2 o'clock in the morning, I heard very loud explosions. And that was the result of both Zircon missiles, which are anti-ship missiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles coming here into the capital. Many people, as you mentioned, were sheltering, but still over a dozen people have been reported killed, and now over at least 80 people have been injured across the country. Okay, let's go to Moscow. Yulia Shapovalova there. What is Moscow saying about all of this, Yulia?
Well, the Russian Ministry of Defense always says basically one and the same thing, that they always target Ukraine's military industrial infrastructure, and they never comment on Ukraine's civilian casualties or disruption. And we've heard from the Russian leadership that they're not going to wind down their war. They're going to continue it, and they're going to achieve their goals, as they say. Earlier today, the Russian Ministry of Defense also reported that their air defenses had destroyed 327 drones over around 20 Russian regions overnight. One person is reported dead and one injured in the border Belgorod region, and also in the Nizhny Novgorod region, one person has been killed and 4 injured. Ukrainian drones tried to target and basically targeted an oil refinery there belonging to Lukoil. This is one of the biggest Russia's energy companies, private Russian energy company. Well, as you know, Russia's energy infrastructure is always a priority to Ukraine, and their attacks, they effectively destroy Russia's refineries, and reportedly oil refining in Russia fell to a multi-year low in June. And this decline in refining has already impacted the fuel market here in the country, and authorities have tightened measures to balance the market, including bans on gasoline exports, and discussions are now underway to ban diesel fuel as well. And of course, I'm sure that many of you have seen long queues here in Russia. People are queuing for days to get fuel because heavy rationing has been imposed. People can receive from 15 to around 40 or 50 liters per vehicle throughout countries, and every day we hear reports that more and more Russia's regions impose heavy rationing of fuel for their citizens. And of course, enterprises have also been affected by this fuel shortage.
Okay, let's go back to Audrey in Kyiv. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy was quoted as saying that there were reports previously that an attack was imminent. You mentioned that people were sheltering. How much warning did people get, Audrey?
People were aware that there would be an attack on Tuesday. Authorities here warning that it could happen either on Tuesday night or on Wednesday night, which was the threat has been lasting, Rob, for a few weeks. On edge. We've seen, as Yulia mentioned, that Ukraine has been ramping up these mid and long range strikes into Russia, and many people here were expecting some sort of retaliation for that. Now, President Zelenskyy, who was in Ireland when this attack happened, is now on his way back to Ukraine in light of this. But we know that in just about a week's time, he'll be heading to Ankara, Turkey, for the NATO summit, where he'll be pleading essentially with his European allies and with those members there for more air defense. PAC-2 and PAC-3, the American-made Patriot interceptor missiles, which are widely considered pretty much the sure way of intercepting ballistic threats like we saw overnight here. These hypersonic missiles really can only be intercepted using these weapons, and Ukraine is in very low supply of them, which is why this has been really the forefront of the president's agenda and will be the forefront of his agenda next week in Ankara.
Okay, let's go back to Yulia in Moscow. You were telling us before about the lines that were growing at petrol stations as a result of Ukraine's intensification and hitting the energy infrastructure in Russia. Is there any indication that there is a growing sentiment inside Russia to put pressure on Vladimir Putin to bring this war to an end? Are people beginning to feel this on a daily basis?
Well, no doubt it's a big concern for the Russian government and for its leadership. Obviously, Russia is going to hold parliamentary elections in September, and of course, people are pretty much discontent about what's going on. But many here understand that it's some sort of a vicious circle, because Russia continues its strikes on Ukraine and Ukraine continues to strike back. People are feeling less safe right now, and they understand the reason, the cause of what's going on here. And at the moment, most surveys we've seen show that a very big percent of people want this war to end as soon as possible. So of course, for the authorities, it's a big thing how to, well, it's a big ask for them how to solve so many problems the Russian society and Russian economy is currently undergoing. And well, we see that what they're doing right now, they're trying to tackle this fuel crisis by imposing heavy fuel rationing. As I mentioned before, they have also loosened fuel quality regulations, which is bad. People are not happy about that either, because it's bad for their cars, it's bad for the environment, and also people get stranded every day at airports because they always undergo disruptions, and people are not happy at all. But President Vladimir Putin has commented on the recent situation, and he said that Russia has to build up its air defense capabilities and to quickly repair Russia's oil refineries. But of course, it's easier said than done, of course.
Yulia Shapovalova in Moscow, Audrey MacAlpine in Kyiv. Thank you both very much indeed. Well, Samir Puri is a visiting lecturer in war studies at King's College in London. He says the scale of the attacks shows that both sides are still producing significant amounts of ammunition and drones.
The war, it's in its 5th year of the full-scale invasion. It's settling into a really worrying pattern, which is of these mutual exchanges of long-range strikes. Now, for Ukraine, this is a big accomplishment because they started this war without long-range strike capability that they've displayed attacking refineries and attacking Moscow. In terms of Russia's attacks into Ukraine, of course, these long-range strikes have been going on intermittently ever since the full-scale invasion began. But I think what's notable is that there's a very clear retaliatory cycle that has descended. And on the Ukrainian side, they're launching these drone attacks to hit the refineries to add further pressure on Russia to force Putin to come to the negotiating table. But the Russians, rather than conceding, are retaliating. There might be a few days or weeks pass between the Ukrainian strikes and what we're seeing with the Russian retaliation. But it's very clear that neither side will budge, and both sides have got the capability to keep striking each other in this way. The number of drones that are being fired on a regular basis. Clearly, both Russia and Ukraine have got the factory capabilities, and they have the flow of parts from outside of their countries to have this continual production line of drones. Of course, on the Russian side, it's the Shahed drones, the original Iranian design. From the Ukrainian side, they've indigenously developed longer-range drones. But it is the numbers of drones that are being fired at each other, which just, I think, gives us an insight into the size of the stockpiles and the depth of those production lines.